Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Beth Wyko, and I am the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Allies for Health and Wellbeing. And in that video that we just watched, Michael Neal talked about the importance of the volunteers. And the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force started as a volunteer organization and was a grassroots organization that has now become Allies for Health and Wellbeing. And we're able to do all of the things that we do today because, as he said, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and those giants were the volunteers who were with the organization from the very beginning. And I'm so excited this evening to have Tammy Frech and DJ Stemmler here to talk a little bit about the importance of volunteers at the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force. So first of all, tell me what you did when you were working with PATF.
Thanks, Mary Beth. I was the very first Education and Prevention Program Manager. I worked from 1988 to 2000, actually started as a volunteer. I met Carrie and Tony Silvestri at a volunteer event, and I started volunteering with them, and then I was very pleased to work there. So I worked with not only Carrie as executive director, but also Mike Neal as executive director. Also Sam Golden was executive director during my time, and I worked with Pam too.
Excellent.
I was a hotline volunteer initially, and then after that I became a volunteer case manager. And that meant making sure that clients had whatever they needed it in the community.
Excellent. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that volunteers played in the early days of the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force?
They were essential. I mean, I think at our height we had over 300 volunteers. As Mike mentioned, they did everything from free legal care to the buddy system, the buddy program. I managed the Speakers Bureau, and we had people from all walks of life, people with no speaking experience. We had a postmaster general and a nun who came and were speaking for us. And we also had personal perspectives, which at that time, if you think about it, was a very brave thing to do. One of those volunteers, Mark Stein, still thriving today, I'm pleased to say. Another one was Joe Dokes. People might remember Joe. And they spoke from the heart about what it was like to live as a person with AIDS at that time, which is very different than today. We also had Project Lifework, which was safe sex workshops. And I have to say, for me, I learned so much. Two of the volunteers, Tim Klein and Don Freeman, I remember them distinctly, helped me create that program, and they taught me a lot. So we couldn't have done it without the volunteers, like DJ on the hotline.
When I think of the volunteers, I think of folks who became what currently is known as essential workers. They literally would open the doors sometimes in the morning, and provide coffee, run errands, do whatever was needed. If that meant the bathroom needed cleaned, you went and cleaned the bathroom. So even though each of us had a title, it didn't define us, and it didn't limit us. We became whatever, kind of think of it as water flowing into a creek, whatever, river, however you say that. I'm from Pittsburgh, so please forgive me. That water flowing into that body, so you fill up whatever space is hollow. So being a volunteer gave me a home. So that was the most important part for me. At that point, I had been disowned from my family, had just started working, gotten out of college, just started working. So it really gave me a home base. And, it was the true meaning of community for me.
Yeah. The volunteers supported us as people, too. And it was family.
One of the things that we talked about, because we met a few weeks ago and we're talking about your time at PATF, and one of the things that stood out to me was how much joy you found in those very dark times. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What were some moments of joy for you?
I always say it was the best of times and the worst of times. It was absolutely, still to this day, the very best people I ever worked with. The moment of joy that comes to mind after how many years ago now is the lunchroom. I have not worked at anywhere since that we would clamor to all get into the lunchroom together, big table, sitting around, take a minute to just have a break and laugh, 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 laugh. John Trafficani and Alan Jones, who you're going to meet later, oh my gosh, they would have us in stitches. It was such a relief. It was such a stress reliever to have just that moment in time all together where we could just laugh.
Some of the people I remember most and who have stayed with me forever was Vince Blewett, and he was our hotline coordinator. And Vince was the person that I reported to first whenever I was volunteer. And one of the best memories, I mean, there were so many people I remember, but I'm here tonight with a friend, Cindy and Carol and Pam and Evelyn. There were so many of us volunteers that are still here in Pittsburgh and, still enjoy each other's company. And, but one of my memories of Vince is when we moved our offices from East Liberty to Wilkinsburg, I started having a problem with reaching things because in the East Liberty office, they were already used to me and put things down low that I really needed, like sugar and chocolate. And those were essential for my functioning. And so Vince would follow me around and say, do you need something? Do you need something? Sometimes it was a little annoying, but so we moved to the new building and I couldn't reach any of the elevator buttons. And so Vince and I came up with this plan that sometimes I used a cane, and if I had my cane with me, it was no problem. But if I didn't, and I forgot it, which I often did, and I was walking back then. You're all thinking, how did she use a cane with the wheelchair? But I was walking back then, so I was even shorter than I am now walking. So the elevator buttons were up high, and Vince tied a stick to the emergency pull thing, which doesn't sound real smart, and a long stick, and I was able to push the elevator button with that stick. But the interesting thing was every Saturday when I would show up for hotline work, the stick was made to resemble a body part, and it would be a different body part every week, so I would get to come in and see, how creative he was over the weekend. And then I think it was the last weekend I was there, I found out how that tenuous little string could actually activate the alarm button. And that I think got one of us in trouble. I don't think it was me, I think it was Vince. But so I have a lot of great memories. I was going to talk about my wedding, but that was going to just be too long of a story, so I figured the elevator button was a better one. But we had, even though there was a lot of trauma and a lot of sadness, there was also a lot of joy and a lot of sharing.
Thank you so much. For our final question for the two of you this evening, what kind of impact did your time at the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force have on your life?
I have to say that song that we heard this morning, or earlier, it was spot on. It changed me fundamentally as a person. But probably the biggest thing was the lifelong friendships that I made.
And I think that's same for me. There are 5 women that we recently connected, 6 women that we recently reconnected with here in Pittsburgh, and we all started out at the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force, and we're all still in touch with each other in some way, and some of us are here tonight, so if you see them, I'll say hello. But the way it changed me was I'm a knitter and a crocheter and a quilter, and you do all of those things with material, with fabric, with yarn, and that material, that fabric, the yarn, it all becomes the structure that you need to complete your project. And that's what PATF was for me, it's the fabric that created the rest of my life. And Vince was my best friend. And I miss.
Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your memories with us this evening.